Welcome to the lecture. I'm Cynthia McAllister. In this lecture, you will learn about the content share format, including its primary aim and procedures. This lecture also includes a full description of the content share format. The primary aim is to provide the opportunity to report the experience of overcoming a conceptual challenge encountered in academic work. By referencing the experience of overcoming challenge in the learning conference, students have an additional opportunity to reinforce a growth mindset about learning. By recounting in narrative the nature of the challenge they faced, how they persevered to resolve their confusions, and how learning will apply to new situations in the future in the form of a learning goal, students are taking agency in developing as learners. The procedures are as follows. 2 students are scheduled in advance to share each day at the conclusion of the activity block. Teachers should post a content share schedule so that students can prepare in advance for their turn. Next, the first presenter convenes the class in a specified meeting area and establishes collective attention. Third, the presenter proceeds to recount a narrative experience of encountering and overcoming a challenge, presenting artifacts of that experience if they're available. Fourth, the presenter reports how learning can be generalized to new situations by sharing a learning goal. The presenter ends the sharing turn by a ritual closing. Thank you for listening to my share with an audience response. Thank you for sharing. The materials needed are the document camera, students' notes to prompt a narrative recount of the learning conference points, and a rubric. At the conclusion of every activity block, 2 students have an opportunity to share their work with a large group. The share is not optional. Every student has the responsibility to share, and the share is a non-negotiable obligation. The share is the soul of the learning culture's curriculum because it contributes to a sense of group cohesion, provides a way for each student to develop their academic identity and self-competence, and provides additional group instruction focused on competencies outlined in formal curriculum and learning standards. The share provides every student with a chance to be smart, as one second-grade student explained. The content share is a companion format to the learning conference. Essentially, it exists as an opportunity for the student sharing to recite the learning narrative they composed during the learning conference. The content share has advantages for members of the audience as well as the person sharing by giving students daily exposure to the strategies other people use in overcoming problems and challenges in academic work. By showcasing what others do to succeed academically, the share supports vicarious learning. To borrow the words of Russell Barkley, the psychologist, the share experience gives every child a chance to perpetrate experiential theft or behavioral plagiarism. Literally, they have the opportunity to steal creative and innovative ways of solving problems by observing how others do them. It has a third advantage of supporting public speaking abilities, as it provides an opportunity for every student to develop confidence and composure when speaking in front of the whole class. The share provides students an opportunity to reflect on their performance as a whole and narrow in on a specific skill or strategy that helps in overcoming a challenge or solving a problem. It's a protocol that helps students develop an incremental theory of intelligence, or the sense that intelligence is malleable, can be increased with effort, and that any challenge can be overcome. The share is an opportunity to identify and articulate work habits or competencies that contribute to achievement. The act of identifying and describing a competency helps reinforce it and build self-awareness. All students should have support in preparing for the content share. During work time, the teacher should conduct a learning conference with the students who are scheduled to share that day. The learning conference conversations provide material for the share because they allow students to develop insights about their challenges, strengths, and goals. Young children especially might need support in planning for the share. For this age group, when they take the share chair, I coach them, reminding them of the steps we covered in the learning conference. By the time each student finishes their share, they will have recounted a personal narrative of their competency at least twice, helping to secure the experience and new insights in long-term memory. The content share is an example of how the learning cultures curriculum exploits unconscious mental states. Because the share is a permanent feature of the curriculum and everyone is responsible for taking their turn twice a month, students internalize these expectations and through anticipation of their turn to share, have a chance to plan for the share by attending more thoughtfully to their competencies as they become aware of them. Over time, with practice, all students become increasingly skilled in reflecting on and talking about their thinking. As children approach adolescence, they develop a keener awareness of broad expectations for competent performance in a broad range of different domains, and an even keener awareness of how they themselves measure up to, quote, normal standards. If an activity is important enough, the child will be able to identify precisely what they do that's worthy of merit. The content share provides this important opportunity. The content share format is formulated to build a sense of self-determination in all students. It provides a certain level of autonomy because each student decides the focus of his or her share through the learning conference. And the share helps develop a sense of relatedness and camaraderie within the classroom. Students are expected to assume responsibility for actively listening and supporting one another. And daily opportunities to practice responsive listening translate into an ethos of empathy and mutual understanding in the classroom. The sense of relatedness instilled in the classroom through, in part, the share, takes advantage of every person's intrinsic desire to do things that connect them to others. The content share is intended to be a self-report of personal academic competencies focusing on a behavior or thinking process. It should be able to be described in a couple of minutes. It's intended to be a brief presentation, not a venue for dialogue or discussion. Of course, if questions arise, they can be answered, but the point is to allow presenters a chance to share a learning journey briefly. The content share also has a powerful norming function. Every day, 2 children assume responsibility to dispense informal lessons that align with official expectations, further securing particular desired values and competencies that have to do with the content at hand. Because the students share a sense of relatedness and camaraderie, the audience is attentive to the focal students' reportive experiences because they're naturally curious about what their peers have to say. Content shares should be documented. This can be done in several ways. First, students 8 and above take notes to prepare for the share. Teachers can have students use forms or index cards with the following headings: the challenge encountered, the strategy used, the standard or curriculum point that was addressed, and the goal that was developed. These records can either be archived individually in students' learning portfolios or collectively in a class-wide file. Teachers should also keep a record of share content. Amy Pillar, formerly a 6th grade teacher at the Jacob Rees School, assigned a share recorder as a classroom job in her class. Each day, one of the students in her class recorded the content of the share according to each category of content. The content share rubric should be used as a guide to implement the format. In this lecture, you learned about the content share. You learned about the primary aim and its basic procedures. Without referring back to the lecture, see if you can explain the logic of the content share. Why is it conducted? What insights in students is it intended to develop?